Just welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. And we'll start off with the consideration of the approval of the agenda.
So second.
Call the roll.
Star,
Aye.
Plumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman. Knighton.
Aye.
Next up, then we have the consideration of approval of the minutes of the April 21st meeting. Any questions on those minutes?
So move. Second.
Any further comments on the minutes?
They look different.
Those are true. Oh, no, those are Jenny's actually.
Oh, Jenny, okay. Not bad, they just look different.
Wait till next time to get another
Yeah,
surprise.
exactly, exactly.
Clerk will call the roll.
Plumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman. Knight.
Aye.
Sorry, Star.
Aye.
Next up, then we have consideration of the approval of the consent calendar. Any questions on the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Any other further comments on the consent calendar? Call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman. Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Plumley.
Aye.
All right, business of the mayor, we have three proclamations tonight, and I think we'll just do these each individually. So we'll start off with a proclamation for National Historic District Preservation Awareness Month. And Mark, you guys want to come up, introduce yourselves and tell us what you're all about?
I'm pleased to be joined by our commission student advisors. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Alexis Stolendorf, and I represent the class of 2027.
May is National Historic Preservation Awareness Month. And each year, the Historic Preservation Commission, which Phoebe is a member of, strives to help create awareness and of the significance of our community's history, our historical buildings in town. We just did a trivia night, a Charles City trivia night at the brewery, which was last month because they don't do trivia night in May. Well, it's the first time we did that, which is fun. Had a lot of information. A lot of people probably didn't know about Charles City before. And the commission is a 5-member commission that's appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. And currently Christopher Anthony is our chair. And, we have 4 student advisors, 1 for each class in high school. We just finished doing the student interviews for the graduating 8th graders, one of which will be announced as the new student advisor starting next fall. One other thing the Historic Preservation Commission does to help with awareness is we created a series of historic image puzzles we've done. We've had 3 before. One was the first one was the Convention Bridge. Then we did the vintage popcorn wagon. It used to be in Central Park. It's now in the museum. And then we did the Hart Park Tractor Company. Actually, it was Oliver who did for that one. Each puzzle includes an information card with the history that goes with that. I was hoping to have our new puzzle here to show you. It's not done yet, but the image is, this is Main Street, Charles City, circa 1965. You ever heard of the term sign pollution? Imagine walking down Main Street with that. So this will be our next puzzle that will be unveiled as soon as it's done. Any questions? I did share with you a sheet that talks about what elected officials should know about certified local governments in our Historic Preservation Commission, which was established in 1994.
Questions for Mark Alexis?
Thank you for starting the proclamation.
I second it.
Motion, Phil?
Yes.
Motion to second to approve this proclamation. Call the roll.
Pittman. Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Plumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
I think we'll approve all of them, Mark, and I'll come back up and we'll read all of them at one time. So next is on proclamations for Poppy Day on May 23rd. Mary, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Mary Blueberry, and I'm here representing the American Legion Auxiliary, Shannon Wilson Unit 174. And May 23rd is the National Poppy Distribution Day. So I'm here asking the City Council to proclaim May 23rd is Poppy Day here in Charles City. We do a lot with our poppies.
How long have you done this now, Mary?
You know, I knew you was gonna ask me. 25, 30 years.
I was gonna say,
Long
you've
time.
done it as long as I've been around. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any other comments?
Well, poppies really, I think, came from the World War One era, at least according to the museum down in Kansas City. I'd encourage anybody who hasn't been to that museum to take the time to go through it, and you'll really appreciate the poppies and where they came from.
We're really going to appreciate them because we're gonna have to start making them ourselves. Because there's not enough veterans at the Marshalltown, home to make them anymore. That'll be a real treat.
Sounds like a good thing to involve some students at the school. For sure.
Oh, that would be a good idea. Yes.
Check into that.
We have a motion, clerk will call the roll.
Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Longley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman.
Aye.
All right, thanks, Mary. Next up, then, we have a proclamation for Municipal Clerks Week, May 4th through the 10th. Brittany, do you have any comments on Clerks Week? It's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
it is. I'm appreciative that you do that for me.
Any questions or motion for Clerks Week?
So moved.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Star.
Aye.
Longley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman.
Aye.
Knighton.
Aye.
Well, she must be doing a good job. She's only been here a week and we're already giving her recognition.
Thank you.
There you go.
It's better we,
So I'll come over and we'll read the three proclamations one at a time. So Mark and Brittany and Chris, you want to be with Mark? You're the new member of the commission, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
I am.
Join Mark and. Actually, so we, you guys, I would take a picture. Okay, well, let's read it first. We'll face this, we'll face the group here. Whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a community and as a people. And whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. And whereas the Charles City Historic Preservation Commission was established 31 years ago this June for the purpose of promoting the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the recognition, preservation, and enhancement of sites and districts of historical and cultural significance, safeguard the city's historic, aesthetic, and cultural heritage, foster pride in the legacy of beauty and achievements of the past, protect and enhance the city's attractions to tourists and visitors. Now therefore, I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 as National Historic Preservation Month and encourage its observance. So we thank you for being members of the Historic Preservation Commission. You said certainly is important to remember our past as we move into our future. So it's interesting how many times the past is relevant to our future. So thank you for being a part of that. So congratulations. Come up then and we will do the poppy celebration. So whereas America is the land of freedom, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers, and whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died on the field of battle, and whereas a nation at peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war, and whereas the red poppy has been designated as a symbol of sacrifice of lives in all wars, and whereas the American Legion Auxiliary has pledged to remind America annually of this debt through the distribution of the memorial flower. Now therefore, I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, do hereby proclaim Friday, May 23rd, 2025 as Poppy Day in Charles City and ask all citizens to pay tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of freedom by wearing the memorial poppy on this day. So Mary, thank you again for all of your years of service. I think the one line in here says, it's nice that a nation at peace still needs to be reminded of all those who have given their lives to promote that peace and keep us out of war. So we appreciate what the American Legion Auxiliary does to remind us of that every year.
Thank you.
Municipal Clerk's Week, whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of governments at other levels. And whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, province, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now therefore, I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, to recognize the week of May 4th through May 10th, 2025 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Brittany Lentz, and to all municipal clerks for their vital services that they perform and their exemplary dedication to communities they represent. So, Brittany, I just want to thank you for being our clerk, and it's a tough job keeping this group under control, but I think you're up to it. So,
far,
thank
so
you.
good.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Right, then next up on our agenda is the third and final reading of ordinance 1190, which is amending the Charles City Unified Development Ordinance, extending the time for expiration and termination of conditional use permits and variances. John, you want to lead us through this for the third
Yes.
time?
Yes, this is the third and final reading of ordinance 1190, and so we've been talking about this for quite a few meetings now. What ordinance 1190 does, it amends the UDO. Right now, the UDO allows for 90 days between Board of Adjustment action and the time a building permit is issued. 1190 will extend that time to 2 years. Also upon written request, the Board of Adjustment can also then add another 180 days. So, and this is the third reading. The Planning and Zoning Commission, they're recommending the council approve this, so we'd recommend approval of the third reading. And following the third reading, we would also recommend the council approve a motion adopting the ordinance and authorizing the publication of it.
John, any questions for John?
That's so moved to approve the third reading.
Second.
Any other comments? Roll.
Cummings.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman. Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
And we're going to have the third reading of ordinance 1190.
Ordinance number 1190, an ordinance amending the Charles City Unified Development Ordinance to extend the time for expiration and termination of conditional use permits and variances.
Cool. Now do we have a motion to adopt and publish ordinance 1190?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments there? Call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman. Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Lovely.
Aye.
Right, so that will be published and put into place. Next, we have resolution 3625. This is approving a parklet agreement between Dean Treats and the city of Charles City for use of public parking spaces on the south side of Kelly Street. You're gonna
Yeah.
discuss this one?
Yep. So, at our last workshop, we had a good conversation about parklet concept that Dave Davidson had shared with us and what he's looking to do this year. Like, as we discussed, we looked at this about 2 years ago. We'd gotten down the road a little bit about the idea and the concept, learned a lot about it. At that time, Dave was just in the process of getting his business, going and the idea. And so the council's direction was to wait till Dean Streets was open, then come back and revisit it at a later time. Well, last year we had the Main Street reconstruction and repaving project, so figured it wasn't a good time to look at it last year, but here we are this year, 2025. And Dave has proposed putting a parklet in what would be 30 feet on that South Kelly Street side adjacent to his building. He additionally had another 22 feet, which would have been in front of a serving window of sorts. We discussed, we didn't want to see the parklet down there. So this agreement is for that 80 feet, 3 stalls, 80 feet there in front of the building. And so we also talked about various things that we wanted to see in the agreement. And I know I noted that we talked about requiring that the public sidewalk remain accessible to the public. And that the patrons focus on using the parklet for the foods and drinks, and that there's not loitering outside of that. We talked about this being a 3-year agreement. Initially was to discuss maybe 5, maybe 1. This agreement that Brad's put together is for 3 years. It does have a provision in there where either party can give notice and we can cancel ahead of time. So if there's changes or things we can see along the way, I'd like to think we can work within this agreement here, or, we could look to terminate, potentially as well. We talked about not using that additional 22 feet down the side there. And so all those things were incorporated into this agreement. One of the things that we did talk about was the idea of really, how do we help patrons not loiter on the sidewalk? Is there a way to put a gate on that building side, if you will? And so I asked David to provide a top-down view. And so that's the one attachment that I've put in your packet. He provided 2, one that said no decking, one with decking needed. And so the decking needed is the one that he's been talking about, where it would be flush with the sidewalk. Otherwise, the other one he had on there was a ramp down to street level and then just having everything street level. But what he's proposed is building a deck of sorts of 2 by 6, whatever that height that would make it flush. And so it's an 8-foot wide area that runs 80 feet. So it's not very deep. And he sent a number of pictures over as well. And the one that really stood out to me was this one here that talks about College Park Opens Restaurant. And it shows how the seating is in there. And that's really indicative of what he's looking to do, where it's, there's a table, 4 chairs, and it's right off, it's right off the sidewalk. So there's really not much of an area there to put a gate or additional type of fencing, because, if you have a seat and chairs right back to back to back, it would have to remain open in that sense. So I wanted to include that picture. And after I talked with Dave a few times on Thursday as well. And this was kind of, because he talked about having the metal plating that kind of goes in between from the curb to the parklet. So you eliminate that gap there. One of the things that, I think the mayor and I talked about when we looked at this is you can see a yellow stripe on there. And so we wondered, and I proposed this to David, is maybe that could say, no alcohol or food beyond this point, and that could serve as the quote unquote, signage or, demarcation to encourage people to stay in the parklet. Is that space between the curb and the building? I think I initially emailed everybody and said that was about 10 feet. I was over there and took a picture. It is only about 8 feet wide. And then part of that's only 4 foot wide because you have the ramp that goes into Dean Street. So there's not a lot of room there. I mean, it's adequate, but there's not a lot. So I think it is important that we want to help encourage that people be in the parklet and not loitering outside of that. As we talked about at the workshop, this is going to be an area where he's going to look to serve beer and wine. So it has to be part of it. This entire footprint needs to be his building, the sidewalk and parklet, all needs to be within the footprint of the liquor license. But our desire and our ability to keep that area free flowing and open is we can certainly do that, but people can get their beverages, food or whatever from Dean's Treats or Dean's Eats and take it to the area. We just don't want them kind of loitering in between. So with that, we propose the attached agreement. Dave is in agreement with that agreement with one exception. And that was something that I discussed with Brad today and we tweaked a little bit. And that, just read it here for you. It's under section 4C. It talks about fencing around the area. Is there in the agreement that you have on your packet here, it talks about that there will be fencing around all four sides, except for the sidewalks, the building side where you have the entrances. And that's not really accurate. Dave says, I'm gonna have, there's gonna be, barriers around the other three sides, but the building side is gonna be open, kind of like what the picture depicts. So Brad has drafted an update that reads as follows. The owner shall install fencing or barriers around the parklet on all sides, except for the side adjacent to the sidewalk. The fencing/barrier shall comply with city building codes. So that's how the agreement would read if you choose to approve it that way. But everything else in the packet is the same. So.
Questions from the group?
Has Mr. Davidson visited with all the neighboring businesses down there about this project?
I don't know if he has.
To me, that seems like that's something we require of any other time we've had a street closure or
Well, I guess
kind of use of public right of way.
we did, so that was brought up last Wednesday. You may have asked that Wednesday too. And I know the response was, last year they did a survey. I think Markey was even part of that survey where they surveyed some of the adjacent property owners about it. I don't remember exactly the results, but.
He had indicated he had talked to them 2 years ago when he brought this up, but I don't know if he had done it more recently. That was some that sticks in my head, that the way you phrased it made me think he had spoken with them last time around.
I remembered the survey being mentioned, but I didn't recall any direct conversations being mentioned.
Yeah.
It needs to be my memory.
Do we have city building codes that address specifically parklet fencing and temporary areas like this?
Not as of yet.
So how do we sign an agreement that quotes that page?
We have general requirements for fencing. I think it mainly pertains to height and material. Is that right, John? Yeah. So he'd be required to follow the height and material for the fencing or barriers.
What would those be?
Is it under 6 feet?
Yeah, it's a maximum height. We set for different, districts.
Is there a minimum height?
Generally, when anybody does do a height, the minimum height that what we see is 4 feet. Which is, but I don't think our ordinance states anything on the minimum height.
Having recently traveled and also really looked at this a lot as I've traveled around the Midwest, I don't see many fences around parklets that I've seen. But I certainly wouldn't want to have one that is so tall that you couldn't see around it from the seating area itself. I would hate to hinder a business's opportunity to enhance their performance.
Do you have the photo that we looked at last week that shows the?
Yeah, I don't, I didn't attach that as part of the.
And I apologize, I did not review last week, so.
Yeah, he's gonna be putting those Jersey barriers around it that are probably 2 foot tall, maybe 30 inches. And then he actually has some decorative pieces that actually match the building that are gonna be top or part of that, so. It's gonna be high enough to stop any type of vehicle type of a thing and still low enough for anybody sitting in there to be able to see both in and out, so. we had talked way once upon a time, I think 2 years ago, about adopting a parklet ordinance. And I think, this is kind of our beta test, so if this works out and we wanna move forward doing something like that, that's something that we could consider, but we don't have a specific ordinance towards one right now.
Well, again, I was just pointing out that we were quoting in our agreement with them something that doesn't exist. Kind of.
Well, yeah, we don't have anything specific for, the parklet, but we have maximum height restrictions and material restrictions. I guess those would be the two requirements, that it has to meet our height requirements and has to be, you use a material that's authorized by our UDO.
Brittany just looked up the one from the workshop, and it looks like that barrier to the street side is about 3 to 4 feet tall.
Okay.
Guessing.
It doesn't look like it goes up to the push bar on the door, like, so if this is taken at the right angle and right scale, but.
So farmer's market opened on Saturday, so I walked over by there and last planning session, we talked about some sort of demarcation line between the curb and where the parklet starts, curb line. I kind of like the idea. I would like to see something that a painted line, the length of it, as the example you've given, that shows that, this is the area. I think the true test is really gonna be, at the end of this month with Party in the Park. I think our first one kicks off, Party in the Park.
May 3rd.
Yeah, and then the 4th of July, I'll be curious to see. The reality is there's not a whole lot of seating in Central Park, so either you bring a lawn chair or you're gonna stand. I think when Party in the Park in 4th of July, where that street is closed because of the band show or the concert stage, I think you're gonna have a lot of people congregating over there. I'll be interested to see how he addresses that. For that, but I'm good with one condition, is that we come back and look at this. This winter sometime before next summer, kind of like what we talked about at the planning session, what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to do, and then I would agree that if this does work, then we really need to draft an ordinance that protects us as a city, but also delineates all of the requirements, and I'm not sure where else we could actually do this. Is kind of, it's not on Main Street, it's side of Main Street, but a lot of different things to consider with an ordinance.
And I think, Patrick, to what you said, addressing it this winter, I think we address it all summer long.
Yeah.
If in the 4th of July, there's problems. His liquor license only covers that space, and so, he's in more trouble than we are if people go out of his space with liquor. So I think, we address it all through the time. I think, like I say, this is kind of a good test case to see how this works, and just keep an eye on it all the time.
I try to include a little bit of a catch-all in paragraph 6, just in case there are issues or things we haven't thought of until it's up and running, that the owner is required to respond to any requests for modifications or adjustments and notify the city of the status of those requests. And then as Steve mentioned, after September 30th, the city would have the option to terminate this for future years if things don't go as anticipated or as planned.
Steve and I were talking the other day, is September 30th the right date? Because we talked about, there's a lot of nice days in October, and I would guess that he'd be willing to pay for another month if he could be open 5 days in October.
Yeah, that's what we had. I guess Dave didn't indicate otherwise.
I thought he might, but he didn't.
I mean, would there be an option if it gets to be September 20th and Dave comes in and says, can I have one more month? Would that be an option, Brad?
Yeah, we could certainly do an amendment or addendum to extend that date.
Or we just change it to October 31st and
Well, that's I guess that's the
30th.
question.
I'm almost thinking that would be the better way to do it, but give us the ability to end it sooner just in case it snows or something, and we say, you know, you gotta get that off there.
If he's agreeable to that, because I say it'll cost him an extra $300 for another month. So he have to be agreeable to that October 31st date also. Might say it's not worth it for $300 to be open 2 days or. I guess I think I would be open to September 30th or October 31st, either one, depending on what he would like to do.
Yeah, I think that last month of October, I'm, you know, willing to be flexible, allow it to be there, but then either party can say, we're gonna bring it in. You know, I don't know how that would work from a language standpoint, but it makes sense. And if it can be done so that it's in there and flexible instead of having them have to come back to ask for the extra month.
Yeah.
That would be good.
That may be necessary anyway, because you know, we're assuming September 30th, he's gonna, if it's September 30th, that means he needs to have that thing out on October 1, it should be out of there, so. Maybe we should build in a little extra time anyway, just so he can give him time to remove it without it violating the lease. So maybe October 15 or something like that, maybe. Give him a little bit, that'll take care of those first 5 days, and then it'll give him an additional 10 days to get it removed.
I don't think we care as a city if it's done on September 30th or October 31st. I think we're agreeable to whatever date we would like to put in there.
We hold, yeah, that's what I mean, we hold Tyson's and well, not Hy-Vee any longer. We hold those to the, you know, that date to have the parking lot clear when they lease, so.
Yeah.
Let's do the same with him, let's make it make it understandable to him, you know, September 30th, that parklet needs to be gone. You know, because I'm under the assumption he may not have that understanding, he may think, okay, September 30th, the lease is expired, okay, now I got a few days to move it out, no.
I think just because that September 30th date is referenced in multiple spots in there, I guess my preference would be for council to approve it as we presented tonight, and if Dave decides he needs more time, we could do an addendum and amendment and change at a later date. But just flipping through there at September 30th dates used for the expiration date, parklet removal, the date where we can terminate after that, so it's representing 4 or 5 different spots.
Yeah, okay. And September 30th is a Tuesday, so that probably, you know, he would probably be done on the 28th on Sunday, and so that gives him 2 days to get it picked up too, if we keep it on that date. So I think that's to address your part, Philip.
Yeah.
It gives him a couple days. So I think it sounds like the consensus is to stick with the 30th according to Brad. And if Dave wants an extension, we'll deal with it as that date comes closer.
Yeah, 'cause he may not want to pay for that extra time.
That's true. Yeah, but one thing, looking at the contract, one thing that isn't addressed is if he doesn't, or unless I'm missing it, if he doesn't get it removed by that time, what's the repercussion at that point?
If he breaches the agreement, we have to give him 5-day notice. And if he doesn't then cure the breach, we can terminate the agreement and actually go in and remove the parklet.
Okay, but that's what I mean, it'll already be ended at that point anyway. I'm
Right,
saying at the end of the lease, if he doesn't have it removed during that, before that time frame, or when that time frame ends, what is our,
Isn't that covered under number 13?
is it, that's what I was wondering.
yes, so 12 and 13, we would notify him of a breach, and then if he fails to, I guess, if he fails to remove by September 30th, within 10 business days, we can remove it and assess to his property.
Okay,
This isn't a 1-year lease particularly, even though it can't be broken, this is a longer term.
that's 3-year lease, yeah.
He's got something to give up if it doesn't, he doesn't get it.
Other comments?
I appreciate the adjustments that were made after our discussion last week, so I'm satisfied with the agreement. And I look forward to seeing how it goes, so I would move to approve resolution 3625.
Second that,
Any other comments? Call roll.
Pittman.
Aye.
Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Lumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Good luck today. The only thing I would saw in the agreement is, I think it's Dean Treats, not Dean's Treat. I think there's no apostrophe S on those. Minor thing. All right, next up is regulation 3725. This is directing proposal for vacation of certain real property to planning and zoning for consideration. John, you gonna take this one?
Yes. Okay, so we did talk about this at last week's planning session. This is Cedar Street, a portion of, vacating a portion of Cedar Street. Cedar Street it runs from Gilbert Street to the south boundary of Ryden's First Edition. Ryden's First Edition is located there south of 9th Street. And this is an 82-foot portion of the very south end of Cedar Street, basically from Ryden's Circle south to the south boundary line. And I find it interesting, is when you go back in the original subdivision plans, this section of Cedar Street was designed to be paved. But for some reason along the lines, it didn't get paved. And this does provide access to that parcel south of Ryden's Circle that has no other access. And if, as right of way, for it to be paved, it has to be a 31-foot wide public street with curb and gutter. So with it vacated, then it could be a driveway. But first, with the way it works, a street vacation request comes to the council, and the council then refers it to planning and zoning for further study and for recommendation. So what's resolution 3725 tonight, the only action is to refer it to planning and zoning. They will have a public hearing, they'll have meetings and return it with a recommendation. So that's what we're recommending approval tonight.
I so move to approve it.
Second.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Lumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Abstain.
Pittman.
Aye.
All right, so we'll send it on to planning and zoning. Next up, we have resolution 3825, and this is setting a public hearing for the fiscal year 25 budget amendment. And that will be for May 19th at 6 o'clock. Talked about this at our workshop, but Steve, you wanna?
Yeah, just a quick little review. This is the amendment to our fiscal year 25 budget that we're currently in. This is a process we typically do once a year, and this is anytime this state law requires anytime that you exceed what you budgeted in a specific function, you have to amend the budget. So whether it be public safety, business activities, the different way it breaks down. Park and Rec and Library, they're in a separate function as well. If you go over, you have to amend the budget. And it doesn't matter if you've gotten additional revenues to offset those expenditures, it's whether the expenditures themselves have gone over. And so that's often the case, and it is this year as well. And just some of the things we've noted that are reasons for the amendment. We've had, basically timelines on projects and how they line up and change, most notably the City Hall project and the pool project. That's all money that came in that we received and money we're expending going out through that year, but it wasn't technically budgeted for. So there's also some TIF payment changes. We had the inclusive playground project. Housing department severing from the city had an impact, and the ending funds and all that, but yeah. So at the end, we're looking at, looks like about a total of amendment of about $5.9 million in expenses. And so we will set May 19th at 6 p.m. to consider the adoption of the budget amendment.
Question?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Star.
Aye.
Lumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman.
Aye.
Knighton.
Aye.
Right, then we will have consideration of resolution 3925. This is for a partial pay estimate for the City Hall Police Department renovation project. Steve?
Yes. So, we have partial payment number 3, for the City Hall project, and the total amount that we're paying, is the amount due less retainage is $107,228.85. So this payment cycle, they've done, additional demolition work, some general groundwork, some HVAC stuff has taken place already, so that's the lion's share of the work that's happened. Some aluminum panels that were ordered from the vendor. Those are all things that took place this pay period that we're looking at here, so. Looking to approve resolution 3925 on the City Hall project. And just I guess to note, the change orders, we talked about the workshop last week, they will be taking place in the future. They're not reflected on here, obviously, yet, so.
Berkeley Crane has reviewed this.
Berglund Cram has reviewed it, signed off on it, and John is also doing a good once over, so I think we're in a good place for improvement.
Is the timeline, is it, are we ahead of schedule, on schedule, behind schedule?
I would say we are on schedule.
Okay, that's good.
To approve?
Second. Either one, go ahead, doesn't matter.
Other comments? Call the roll.
Lumley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman.
Aye.
Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Next up is resolution 4025, and this is a pay request for the pool renovation project. Steve, you taking this one too?
Yes,
John keeps looking at you, so.
he just put these together. Of course, I asked him to put these together. Yes, so we're looking at what would be partial payment number 5 to Woodruff, who's doing most of the construction work on the pool project. This amount is for $85,634. The project is nearing completion. One of the things I guess I would note that we've talked about it being open on Memorial Day, and that's still the case. There was a time last week where we thought that might not be the case because one of the curing agents they have to use on some caulking material was going to take longer than they thought. Long story short, we're gonna be in good, we're gonna be okay. So we're still on for Memorial Day to open. But construction, everything's winding down. They still have to install the new climbing wall yet. And they have to take out the one diving board and finish off that area. Make it so it's anti-slip and whatnot, but it's coming together. We for a very small amount, we had them paint the mushroom. So the mushroom is all fresh looking. I haven't been down there to see it yet, but I hear it looks pretty good. So between that and the freshly cleaned flume from a year or two ago, and the new climbing wall and the newly painted pool and all the fix ups, it should be looking pretty sharp this year, so. So look to approve a resolution 4025, payment number 5.
I'm excited to see this. I think, this is good. We got a lot of good feedback from the Park and Rec Board. We had a lot of good discussion in our initial capital improvement plan. It was also in the second capital improvement plan, so it's nice to see one of these nearing completion and we can check it off that as a win. And met with some concern as we started this, but one of the nice things about having a pool or maintaining a pool is bringing new folks into town. So we're gonna have new housing going up. So opportunity for more people to enjoy the pool in the next couple of years should be very positive, I would think.
And I think this is a very cost-effective solution for just under $1 million. We're gonna extend the life of the pool for the next 15, 20 years. Whereas replacing a pool, you're talking $5-6 million. So I think it's a wise investment.
I move to approve.
Second.
Other comments? Let's call the roll.
Friesman. Hickman. Knighton.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Longley.
Just to follow up a little bit, the pool will open on Memorial Day, but then it'll be closed for the next 3 days until school is actually out on. Then it'll reopen on Friday. I think aren't we still planning on having a grand reopening on the Friday? Then I think it was the plan.
Is that, did we end up on Friday?
That's what we decided
Okay.
between Mark and Tyler.
Yeah.
Then do it like at 1 o'clock on Friday when they have the grand reopening of the pool with the ambassadors and all that kind of stuff.
Cut the ribbon so the kids can go run into the pool.
Yep.
Great
And I also
photo.
talked to Tyler last week and he was very encouraged that he has a lot of people applying to be cashiers, lifeguards and assistant managers. He's really happy the number of people that are potential workers this year. So that's going to be good also. All right, next up then we have resolution 4125. This is for our water clarifier. We got Corey here tonight. If anybody has, you want to explain Steve or Corey a little bit and then take any questions anybody might have.
Well, I mean, I'll let Corey talk about the main stuff, but I guess, we talked about, this is the part of the equipment with the, ethyl and softening plant, the rake and all the equipment in one of the two clarifiers we have in there needs to be replaced. And so the quote you had from last week was, for replacing, one of those. And we talked about, well, the other one's gonna have to get done sooner than later. But it makes sense to see if we can get a discount or freeze the price or whatever you want to call it, with getting a duplicate set and then have that second set ready to go and just pay for, that installation afterwards. And so that's the actual quote that I tied in here with this once Corey got this and sent this over. So there's no discount for buying two of them, but I guess what you are guaranteeing is you're getting it potential for a price increase would happen. So this would be a total of just under $47,000, $46,903. That have the equipment for two of them, but only, mobilization and installation for one. So we'd have to pay that $82.75 again in the following year or whenever we decide to put that in. If we want to go with the two pieces. Now, that's something else we talked about too. This item was not a budgeted item, right?
Correct, yeah.
So, we are going to have to probably, cut something else out to do this likely, potentially, maybe not. So I don't know if we want to buy double the equipment now on this since it's not a budgeted item, but who knows what's going to happen with price increases and all that. And if we know it's going to be coming, maybe it's best just to try and do it now. So that's my setup.
Nailed it. Corey, is there any chance that this equipment would become obsolete or anything like that within the next few years?
I'd say not with our plant design. I mean, I can't see, this is, maybe it's not a control panel. I mean, I guess one of them is a control panel, but the main parts of the chain and the bearings and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, we're not gonna be changing our process anytime soon, so this is gonna need to be there for 20+ years.
That's correct, yes.
So, and that's the only reason I could think of not do it would be if there was something new coming out.
And then the other one, not the one that's in need of immediate repair, do we have? Are we looking at a year that it might last, less than that, or I can't remember.
So we'll take it down in the fall and then have them come in and do an inspection and see. I mean, I would assume they're both, 15 years old, same amount of wear and tear. I mean, if they say we're good for another 2 years, then I guess we have it on hand if we order two, but.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, because that was my only thinking is if it lasts another 2 years, do we want to set ourselves up to have 2 units installed at the same time so that every time they go, they kind of go together and we always have that sort of double cost, or if it can be staggered, would that be a benefit? But if we can have it on hand, if we have storage for it, if it doesn't need to be immediately replaced, I guess that's. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know what would take a hit in the budget though? If we did this?
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe painting there's some painting of the plant we had in there that was
Exterior.
probably on my list of maybe
Yeah, I'd
possible
say that'd
cuts.
be the first thing we cut. push it off another year. Exterior painting of the water plant and some pipes inside.
Kind of agree with my peers, it's not gonna, anything's not gonna get any cheaper in the foreseeable future, so if we can do it now. I think you have a trade out, right? So don't skip the painting for a year. Make up for this, it's a mechanical part, so I would agree with that.
There's no, industry these days always goes for just in time. In other words, you don't buy stuff to put on a shelf.
Yeah.
You buy it when you're gonna use it. So I don't know if this fits that category or not, but so we're assuming the price will go up. Is it worthwhile to spend $19,000 to have something sit on a shelf for 3 years?
I guess I would say peace of mind to know it's there too.
I think it's a pretty safe assumption that the price is gonna go up, so yeah, I would feel more comfortable having it there just in case, and like I said, we may find out in the fall that we need to make this replacement.
How accurate is our estimate for the time remaining on this will be best?
I'm sorry, to say that again?
We're estimating maybe 2 years left on the second pump. Are they pretty accurate with that? Is that a number that we just kind of picked because it's still working okay?
I guess, yeah, I just kind of came up with it. So like I said, they both run, they both had about the same amount of hours on them. But without taking it down, actually have West Tech come in and do the inspection.
If we get to that point and there's a question of its duration left, I would really encourage us to consider replacing it then, because of the cost of $8,000 to bring this team back in. And I know it's gonna cost some to have the team in to do the second one, but there's travel and there's other stuff.
So you're not doing both at the same time.
But you could do them after each other, couldn't you?
So,
It would take, yeah, a good, I guess, 3 days probably wait time to get the water, get everything set up to.
Thank you, I missed that earlier. I would like to see us get the second one, get ready for it. I appreciate you looking at this again, because we've talked about this a couple times about what it's worth to get a second one and the duration and the same questions we've had over a long period you've answered here. Fully and succinctly. That's very nice.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Resolution is just for one, correct? So we'd have to approve an amended resolution for the second.
So we would want a motion to amend the resolution first, if that's the direction the council wants to go. And a resolution to approve the amended resolution.
I think we can just have a motion to approve resolution 4125 with an amendment to the quote that's included in the packets, the increased quote.
We don't need a
I don't
motion
think we
to
need
change.
separate, correct, I don't think we need separate actions.
Okay,
Based on what you know, is that your recommendation?
I would say too, with the lead time of 6 weeks, I mean, it'd be nice to have one hand too, so.
I would so move for both units.
Second,
And that's for a total cost of $46,903.
Not 903.5, but 903 right on the mark. Yes.
any other comments or questions?
is this the last time we receive the chip?
of course,
Wishful thinking.
Also, I'm waiting for it to go out.
I think we'll call the roll.
Pittman.
Aye.
Knight.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Longley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Join the meeting. Water taken care of, now we're gonna talk about the wastewater. Dan's here.
Into the water. Both ends of the water.
Yeah, well, we got it distributed, now we gotta take it away.
We have some dams and some.
That's right. It's always a good thing, right? Steve, you wanna leave this one in, or?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually a project that's been part of our capital improvement plan, something that we had been talking about for the last year or so plus. On at least council level, Dan and I have been talking about this a little bit longer, but this is for a replacement of the controls cabinet and moving to a three-phase VFD pump for the Maple Heights lift station. And so this is something that we have budgeted for in our fiscal year 26 budget, and something that we'd like to get ordered. This would replace our current equipment, which is starting to fail. Standard thing of, they don't make those parts anymore. We don't have pieces to replace it. And so this is gonna be a piece that's gonna be a part of the long-term solution. They'll have the VFD drive, so the pumps will, slowly ramp up. So that should lead to longer life, that good stuff. What other good stuff, Dan?
Yeah, as I put in my summary, it's ran by capacitors, as I said, and relays. If one part of them goes pump run, it won't pump. It burns up the pumps most of the time, not all the time, but I think I said we've done 4 in the last time we've done one and another with 3-phase pumps. So it's an outdated system. They don't recommend it. It's like a system that should be put for a bigger sump pump. Pasture stock. So we've had a lot of issues out there. So I think it's time.
Questions for Dan?
He gave us a very good brief during budget season on these. We were working through capital improvement plan. We got your input in this. For us and talked about it. I kind of like put another check in our capital improvement plan and get knocked in this one. How many more do we have?
There'll be 3 others that we'd like to do. They're not, there's one other lift station that's got 3 of the pumps. But the panels, they're 3-phase panels already. So if something goes wrong in them, you can get the parts for them, so we can make them last. This one, as I put down, we don't have an extra pump for this lift station. It's hard to get a pump that's a single phase. So this size. So I'd like to get started.
Dan, with this, am I reading this correct? You won't be running through 3-phase to it? It'll be single phase
It's
coming in
yeah,
with the panel?
We don't have 3-phase power there.
Okay,
So so our capacitors start a bigger single phase pump because
Right.
regular power won't start them.
right,
The VFDs switch the power over to make 3-phase just to the pumps.
so it's still single phase coming to the panel.
Single,
And then,
yes, the VFDs converted.
Would it be better to have 3-phase?
Oh, I'd love to have 3-phase. I don't know if that's possible. That's dealing with Mid-America. The good thing about it is we do have 3-phase pumps. And so if it ever did work out, it's been this way since 85.
With this panel setup, would that work if we could get 3-phase to it? We wouldn't have to replace that panel again, would we? Or would we?
I wouldn't think so. I think the only thing is they'd have to maybe they have to change the VFDs
Okay.
for that. I can't say for sure. I can ask, but and then the other thing is the 3-phase pumps. So they say, we won't have a spare per se, but I feel so more comfortable because we have 3-phase. They can find me a 3-phase to pop in and bring it for spare.
Well, if you get them once all to be 3-phase pumps, then if you have one on standby for any of the lift stations, you should be good to go.
They're different sizes,
Oh, they're different sizes.
different volts.
Yeah.
A couple are 208.
That would be too simple.
I was gonna say, is that something that would make sense to work towards, is getting them all to be the same pump, or
Never have that.
never have them?
Never have that. It all deals with head and.
How much flow and how much,
The voltage coming in,
sorry, just trying to.
yeah.
Any other questions, or we have a motion?
I would so move.
Second.
Now, any other questions?
The only thing I would say is I'd suggest you visit with Mid-American and see what it would take, or an electrician, see what it would take to get three-phase to that point.
I'd be curious to know.
I would be very support, I mean, I would support what we've got, that's not a problem. But I would hate to do this project without at least having asked the question of what that would cost, because it's one less issue.
Exactly.
And it's, I think, a better thing for us if we can get to there. I would anticipate it's maybe spending, but without asking.
Exactly.
Yeah, it all depends, on where the nearest three-phase poles are and how it's gonna drop and drag to get there.
Does Mid-America feel generous?
No, they won't.
Well, they are pretty generous.
Yeah, they're not bad for it, but with something like that, you're gonna pay to get it.
I mean, they are good, they're a good, they've been a good partner.
They have.
I think when I was just looking for natural gas out of Old Highway, I didn't think it was that far away, but they estimated it was gonna be like 30,000 just to run natural gas for a generator.
Mm.
So,
Other questions? Call the roll.
Knighton,
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Longley.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Pittman.
Anybody receive any miscellaneous correspondence?
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dan.
Dan.
okay, thank you.
Good seeing you, Dan.
Correspondence from anyone? Brad, anything else to report tonight? Brittany, how about you? How report?
The next work session is on May 14th and May 19th is the regular meeting.
You, city administrators report.
Yeah, I'll just mention, like what Dan was talking about getting natural gas out of Old Highway. That's something we're seeing because of the new Casey's coming in. They're bringing down natural gas and we've asked them to bring a large, between myself and Tim Fox, we've been able to get Casey's to upsize that line, so now that's gonna be served with, I think it's gonna be a 4-inch line.
I think so.
Yeah. So that's, which leads right to the certified site, so that's a huge improvement for access to the certified site and natural gas access, so. Just that came to mind when he brought that up, and so, and then as it turns out, we have a meeting with we have our annual meeting. It was gonna be this Friday, but we're moving that to next week, as a matter of fact, with Mid-American to talk about projects for the year, and so this is perfect. We'll be able to ask them about that 3-phase and see what they can and can't do.
So, as you mentioned that, are you gonna say anything about their right tree surface service damage on our recreational trail? But maybe
John.
we could get some compensation for to fix that damage.
That was on our list of things to talk to them about. Yeah. Wednesday will be our next city hall update on the progress there between City Hall and PD. Talked with the Kading development, process is moving forward for the workforce tax credit application. We're working on that application between Chase, Tim and myself on language and all that good stuff. Getting letters of support from various entities. One of the things that the city council will be asked to do is pass a resolution of support for the project. So we'll be looking at that here coming up. Did talk to him today, the layout of the area is gonna have somewhere around 135, 138. We're trying to figure out what that number is, total units. And so they're discussing doing that in 2 distinct phases. So it'd be like half of one and half the other in 2 phases. So this tax credit application would be for that first phase. And they may do a tax credit application for the next one, but it will be just for about half those units. So they want to get those in, see how they start filling up and then build accordingly. But they will be putting in all the infrastructure in at once. So that'll all be there. So they'll certainly be incentivized to build that next set as soon as they can, but just some of the developments happening with them.
Is that about 20 units down from what the original discussion was?
Well, the initial proposal that didn't have a city street in it was about 156. Once we put a city street in, it went down to about 120, and then things, got shuffled around a little bit, and they're actually looking at doing some 2-story units now out there. So that's got the number up to about 138.
Okay,
So still a work in progress, and we'll see that, but that's kind of where that number's at right now. At the same time, John, and we're working with the hospital on getting a temporary trail put in from 13th to 11th. And then the sidewalk installed from that point to Main Street. I want to get that in here as soon as possible. Hospital wants to get that in as soon as possible. So we're looking to try to figure out where that should be exactly. Do we put it parallel to the city street that's going in, that will just be a temporary trail, or is this more of a long-term solution? Because the hospital is actually looking, because they have property over there, they talked about maybe putting a walking trail in, so that maybe this is part of the walking trail. So trying to navigate that, but we are we are driving that forward to have a trail installation project and sidewalk here in the very near future. So we may even see that on the next workshop. Yes, okay. Otherwise, I guess, yeah, that's all I have.
Anyone else have any board or commissioner or committee reports tonight?
I do. 911, dispatch boards are going to meet Thursday. And one of the topics we're going to try to finish up is the removal of the old style antennas and all that process. That we have all of our equipment coming off the towers that we aren't going to be using in the future because we've moved into the new radio system and it seems to be working well. We sent out an email to all of the main participants in those to ask, is there any reason why those pieces of equipment can't come down? We received no responses from that email. But if anyone knows of a reason why someone is using those pieces of equipment that we aren't aware of, probably better to tell us today than after we take it down and have to try to figure out how to reinstall it all. That would include the repeaters that are in the different towers, Marble Rock, North Springs, Rudd, possibly in there, the towers south of the fairgrounds. Our tower will remain as is, as far as I know. There's no reason to change anything there. Other than that, that project's moving forward and will appear to be quite successful from the initial responses. I'm sure we will tweak stuff or have some concerns over time, but at least it's a positive step forward.
Anybody else?
It does give me a Phoebe one more thing. Talking about that, and you weren't here last week, Keith, so tomorrow, Chief Anderson and Chief Deverell and I have a Zoom follow-up with the fire chief consultant out of West Des Moines about ambulance service and, what a good pathway would be to starting service or moving forward. So as I updated you last week, I reached out to one gentleman that showed up in the grapevine about assisting communities on their GEMT reimbursement. So he and I talked about what that GEMT is, and that's a Medicaid reimbursement. So I asked if he could work as a consultant to kind of help through some of this, and he suggested another individual. So tomorrow we're kind of having that introductory meeting to talk about what that might look like and how somebody might be able to help us move forward with that. So as we push forward on what our ambulance of the future is going to be. So that is tomorrow we're having that meeting. So.
Anybody else? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.